my name for you in my head.
Hello.
Do you want me to?
Sure, yeah.
Nice to meet you, Harper.
Okay, everybody. Zamboni's about to talk. Yay!
Yay!
I've been extremely looking forward to this one as like a send-off because I think it fits really well with what we're doing here. Okay, great. Nobody else got it.
Yeah, so no pressure. Love it. Cool. Hi, everyone. Hello again. Thank you so much for being here another time. I have been thinking about this one for quite some time now. And when I started out, I wrote a little something for this talk. And then a few days ago, I read what I wrote and I was like, this is some bullshit. So I rewrote it on the plane here. And it was really the thing for me was that I wanted to make sure that I had something that was relevant to say, that it was resonant and meaningful. And so I think the thing that I have landed on is that we people need to ask better questions. And most specifically, we here, those of us who are here in this space, have a responsibility, a duty to ask better questions than we have been and that are customarily available to us as people. So, but the reason here is that better lines of inquiry lead to more effective understanding. We get a better signal to noise ratio when we can ask a better question because there's so much information in the world. The world is full of information all the time, and there's no way to get all of the information. And so what we need to do is query in such a way that gives us the information that is actually useful. Rastafari! So it's important to ask these questions, and we, the astromages, we are the ones who have the duty to bring that good data forward. And so let's talk about that a little bit. Let's think about what that is. In the first place, we should maybe get a little context here. Nietzsche observed a little while ago that God is dead. And obviously, that doesn't mean that spirituality is useless or impotent or anything like that. Rather, the insight there is that we no longer have a cohesive cultural narrative anymore. We don't know how to talk to each other. We don't know how to understand what's going on from person to person, from culture to culture, from groups in between groups. We just don't have an understanding of what the world am anymore. And so we're in a place where we have to each individually create our own values about whatever is going on. We don't have a shared value set, and so you have to make it up on your own for your own self. And in a moment where religion is understood to be the opiate of the masses, and there are plenty of reasons why that it makes total sense why we would distrust our native religious institutions, which have been so abusive to us, and why we would distrust others' religious institutions, which we can see from the outside are clearly doing harm to maybe even to us, but then to the practitioners that they have as well. And so not this one and not that one and not that one. And so it leaves us in this place where we end up bereft, where we don't have an understanding and we don't necessarily know what to do or where to go. And so this ultimately creates a kind of chaos that is difficult and problematic, and it causes other kinds of problems. It does, to be in a place where there are no gods and no masters, that does decenter theocratic authority. And so it's useful in that regard, because insofar as theocratic authority is oppressive, then it's good to be able to disrupt that kind of power. But then we run into this problem where we also disrupt our own power by coming to believe that there is no connection, that there is no wholeness, that we are not a part of the greater living thing anymore. And so while it does what I might call reductive atheist materialism does have its benefits, it comes also with problems. And so we are in a moment now, especially, you know, in the age of information, of too much information even, we have a unique opportunity. You know, we're the ones here who are downstream from major translation movements. You know, we have, like I, for example, am a child of Project Hindsight. You know, like the generation of astrologers that came before me didn't have access to Hellenistic texts. Just write in English where I can read them. You know, I don't read ancient Greek. I don't read modern Greek. I know nothing about this, right? But I do read English, and so I'm able to access these traditions, which were simply not available before the fucking 90s. So, and this is true about basically every spiritual tradition that exists. I don't read Chinese, but I can read Taoist texts. I don't read Arabic, but I can read the Quran if I want to. There are many of these texts which are now available. And so this again leaves us with this problem, like, okay, well, kind of none of them are right? They disagree on so many things. And so maybe I believe none of them. Or maybe they're all onto something, but then it's an information overload. There's overwhelm that comes with that. And so there's a crisis of meaning that we live in right now. And it seems to me, in this historical moment, at the beginning of the era of air, which for those among us who are not tough astrologers, like, you know, there are some real nice astrologers in this group, but not everybody. In the, yeah, you see what it is? So Saturn and Jupiter might be thought of as when they come together in a conjunction, then they kind of make the world. So Saturn is going to be boundaries and structures and the bones of the thing, and then Jupiter is going to represent the spirit, the sort of faith and the vitality of it, right? And so the world that, as we understand it, is constituted by Saturn and Jupiter conjunctions, which happen every 20 years. And they happen for a period of 200 years in signs of the same element. And so for the past 200 years, we have had Saturn and Jupiter conjunctions in Earth signs. And so this has been the era of Earth. And so there we might think about like sort of like stacking up the tangible things and building in this sort of embodied physical kind of way, tangible. Things need to be really tangible. But in 2021, we had our first conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius, which is an air sign. And that's the first one of a 200-year cycle where we're going to see these Saturn-Jupiter conjunctions in air signs. And so the analogy that I like to use is like, so if you've spent 200 years raking up all the leaves, then now the winds are coming and they're going to disperse all these leaves, right? So your piles are that you've spent so much time, that we as a society, as a civilization, have spent building up. Those are now coming to be dispersed, And this is really strong for sharing information amongst ourselves, right? We have been able to do, like, we can come together at an event like this only because we are able to disseminate information at a rate that has never been seen before in the world. But we also, all of us here, came of age in a moment where we were still earthbound. And so we need to, because we are at the beginning of the thing, we have a unique and rare opportunity to make a new thing possible. We can make a whole new thing. And in fact, we must make a whole new thing. So because we must, we can decide which direction it's going to go. And we should probably do that. We should probably spend some time thinking about which direction we want to go, because it's, yeah, you know, because it's going to go in a direction. So why don't we make sure that it does that it goes in a direction that we like, you know? So I want to talk about atheist materialism a little more, in order that we might think with ways to do something different than that. The problem with reductive atheist materialism is that it thinks it knows the answer. It thinks it understands. And it is really what it ends up doing is it just ends up saying "nuh-uh" all the damn time. You know? So it's useful to be able to do that. But maybe that's not the whole piece here, you know? So the way that I often think about this is it has the answer, but what if we didn't go for answer and instead cultivated questions? What if we, you know, if you have the answer already, then there is no mystery in the world. Obviously, this is silly. We already know this. Even the most rational of scientists will not posit that all of the science has been done. All of the data has been gathered. We need to ask questions in order to continue to cultivate a better understanding of the world that we live in. Reductive materialism sort of treats the world as if it is a complicated system. And so we might think about a complicated system as like your phone, for example, is a complicated system. There's a bunch of stuff going on there, right? And it's difficult to understand, but it is ultimately intelligible. It is understandable. People made it, and if your phone starts to malfunction, you can take it to somebody who knows better than you do, and then that person will be able to be like, oh, it's this problem, and I just replaced this part, and now your phone works again, right? This is as opposed to a complex system, which our bodies are complex systems, or the forest might be thought of as a complex system, or the ocean, or what ends up happening with complex systems is that they end up being nested, complex systems inside of complex systems inside of other complex systems. So we might think about like an organ in your body as being a complex system, and then it being a part of an organ system, which is itself a complex system, and then organ systems being inside of a person who is a complex system, and then the person living in the forest, which is a complex system, et cetera, all the way, right? And so the complex versus the complicated, the complex is going to be unpredictable. It's too much information, whereas a machine that has been engineered is only so much information. Even when it's a lot, it caps out at a certain point. A complex system never stops being interesting. There's always some stuff that you hadn't thought about, some things that you didn't even know to examine. I think about this sometimes, like let's imagine that you are a scientist and you're out in the woods and you're trying to check something out and you set up a little experiment. And it's your job to just sit there and watch. And then a tree falls on your experiment. There was no way for you to know that tree was going to fall in that moment. It seemed like a good spot to set it up. And then the wind blew in a weird way and and it just fucked your whole shit up, and now you just got to go and you got to start everything over or something like this, right? It's because of the nature of a complex system is unpredictable and mysterious. There are things that are always happening that you haven't necessarily thought of first. And so a complicated system is a system where answers are relevant. A complex system is a system wherein the more questions you ask, the more questions become available. By framing better questions, we can cultivate an active understanding of the greater mystery that continues always. I think of that like if what is known is in a spotlight and what is unknown is shrouded in darkness around what the spotlight shows, then as understanding grows and the spotlight grows, so too does the shrouding mystery grow around it. And that is kind of terrifying on the one hand, right? But it's also kind of exciting. We astrologers and magicians, we are the ones who are beset the task of understanding shapes and arrangements and their consequent flow. So the way that I often think about astrology is, so if you imagine a pitcher of water and then you pour water out of that pitcher, then the pitcher's got a little lip on the end of it. And so when you pour the water out, then the water flows in a certain shape because of that lip, right? And so if you had a jar that doesn't have that lip, then when you pour the water out, it's going to flow in a different shape. Or if you had a jagged edge or any number of shapes that are available in the world, then that is going to change the way that the flow happens. And so what we as astrologers do is we take note of the shape of the cosmos, right? We look at where planets are relative to the backdrop of fixed stars, where they are relative to each other, and where they are relative to the horizon. And so ultimately, even though we're talking about time when we're talking about astrology, what we're really looking at is location. And so things are arranged in a certain kind of way. And because we know what shape things are in, then we can have an understanding of what would flow from that shape. So when the natal chart is in a certain configuration, then we can get some understanding of what the flow is, and you can make some predictions about that. And indeed, to be smart is to be good at making predictions about what the world is going to create, what kind of flows happen. The Picatrix, I am told, I don't speak Arabic, but I am told that the Picatrix is in Arabic called something like a Gayat al-Hakim, which translates to the goal of the sage or the goal of the wise. And to my mind, it is possible that the goal of the sage is to make better predictions about the flow. So then, we are in complex systems. We are deeply embedded in fractal layers of complex systems, which are, by definition, unpredictable. But if we are to be wise, then we're going to try to predict it. So, how unpredictable is it really? If the tree falls on your experiment, was it impossible to know that that tree was weak? Was it impossible to know that there was a windstorm coming? Or had you simply not thought of asking that question? The true sage is open to possibility and asks prescient questions. And we, who do astrology and magic, maybe could do that. Sometimes, on a good day. You know? It's good to remember that reductive materialism is not a useless format. You know, we have learned a lot of good things from reductive materialism. It's, you know, blood pressure and heart rate metrics are useful. They let you know they're in a direction to go. They're useful metrics to have, right? But they are no substitute for the picture of health, or what we might think of as the image of health, right? We astrologer mages love a good image, right? And an image is inherently a kind of wholeness. And so it's not that the details are irrelevant, but rather that the wholeness is where the meaning is. And if you've ever done a reading with a client, then you'll know that as soon as you get done talking about the math of it, oh, you've got the planet in Virgo and the decan with the thing and then immediately the question the client has is, okay, so what does that mean for me? What does that mean? That's the only thing that matters is the meaning. None of the math matters. None of the details matter. They help you get there. It's good to know those kinds of things because you can build something up from that and you can make good predictions by understanding those details, but it is the wholeness of the image that really creates the meaning. It occurs to me that if we humans are going to survive the crisis, then it will be because we had a reason to. When we have meaning, then we have a reason to live. We have a reason to, even when your heart breaks, when it's wildly, deeply uncomfortable, you go through that because it's meaningful. And we are the ones who can understand the shapes and the arrangements and make the meaning. In a moment where meaning is in crisis, we are the ones who have what it takes to create that meaning. But in order to do that, it's probably a good idea for us to cultivate a beginner's mind. You know, like the reductive materialist perspective thinks it has the answers, and so it believes itself to be an advanced understanding of things. But many indigenous cultures, at least in North America, which is like where my people are from, I don't know about all of the indigenous people in the world, but Potawatomi people who I come from often will make note of humans as younger siblings. of our relatives. There are others who have been here longer than us, who may have a certain kind of wisdom that would be prescient. We could maybe learn something from that. I myself am a younger sibling, and one of the reasons why I have been as successful as I have been in my life is because my older brother stepped on all the landmines in front of me. And I was like, oh, okay, there's a trap over there. Duly noted. I'm gonna go around this way. My whole job is to make different mistakes. But because I am younger, I am the younger sibling, because we are perhaps the youngest who live in the world, we maybe would do well to consider ourselves beginners. And as such, maybe we could ask some beginner-ass questions. You know? One of my favorite questions to begin with is that true? You know, like, that's how we got here. That's how we all arrived in the astrologer magician space. You know, like there's a sense in the wider community that astrology isn't real and that magic will never work. And we here, we're like, is that true? I don't know. And so we tried some shit, you know? And we find ourselves here, and because we disbelieved in the truth, in the veracity of the big T truth that had been handed to us, we were able to engage approaches which were observably better than what had been given to us. And we were able to do that because we asked that question, well, is that true for real? If it's true for real, it should stand up, right? Totally. You can run the test. And if it's true, it's true, you know? But if it's not, then what? I actually also think that it's, you know, we also live in a moment where there's a crisis of meaning and none of the religions are real or true or something. And we don't have the possibility of going back. So we can't go back to a time when we didn't have the crisis of meaning. Forward is the only way that we can go. And so we can ask that same question, is that true? Of the old texts. The ancient texts, like, are they true? I don't know. Eric earlier was talking about no one has run Picatrix Magic by the book, you know? Some of us have done Picatrix Magic or like something in the style, right? But we haven't actually run the experiment to see if it's gonna do the thing that the book says it's gonna do. So it is up to us to run those kinds of experiments the same way that we continue to do Picatrix Magic and whatever else. You know, like you pick up a grimoire and it says that if you do such and such a thing at such and such a time, then you will get this outcome. Well, try it. And be ready for it to not work also. Maybe it's gonna work, but maybe it's not, you know? So in the same way that we had to observe that reductive materialist atheism didn't give us the kind of outcomes that were preferable. And so we tried something else. We got to run those same tests on the ancient traditions as we work toward synthesizing in this syncretic way from all of the different texts and cultural, globalized understanding that we can build. As we go about building that, we got to test stuff. And we got to see if it really is true. And then, you know, another question that I really like, that I think is very important, is what would it look like IRL if that thing were true? You know, if we're looking at astrological imagery or mythological imagery or fairy tale or narrative imagery, then they're so fantastic. You know, I don't necessarily expect ever to see a man with elephant feet. You know, but I mean, maybe I will. Who knows? I haven't, just because I haven't seen him doesn't mean he's not out here.
He's hiding.
He may well be. But what would that be? What would it look like, IRL, for a man with elephant feet to be walking around here? You know? How would that actually look in the world that we actually do live? As we run those tests, you know, like, astrological images make a prediction. And so then you can test what actually happens in life against that prediction. And you can go about updating your model about what would actually be true in the world. This is one of the things that I always like. People sometimes in the normie world will hear that I'm an astrologer, and they'll be like, "Oh, you're a space racist." You know, you never heard that one?
Right to that.
Oh yeah. It's because you know, like if you tell somebody you're a Gemini, then they go, "Huh," you know. You know, like, oh man, I hate Pisces so much, or whatever. You know what I mean? And so what I try to cultivate in my practice is, as I get to know people and I know them by their chart, then I let them show me what a Gemini or Pisces placement actually is like. Rather than prescriptively being like, you're Gemini and therefore I know this about you. I've got the answer there, right? Or I could be like, oh, you're a Gemini. What is that? Why don't you show me? And what I find is all the time people say their charts. All the time. People like, you can't stop yourself from saying whatever placements you actually have. And so if you just let people do that, then you can learn, because you cultivated this question of like, oh, well, what would that look like? What does that actually live like in the world that we live in? Another important question that I think we would do well to ask with a beginner's mind is, what is that thing doing? We are in a moment now where, especially in the space of like reductive materialism, we can get to a place where we get overexcited about deconstruction. And so we can sometimes take things apart that we're doing something. We run into the problem of Chesterton's fence. What is that? I love this question. So there was a 19th century scientist named Chesterton. I forget what his first name was. Doesn't matter. Yeah, sure. He was out surveying some land with his buddy, and they came up on a fence. And his buddy was like, "Yo, fuck this fence. Let's knock it down." And Chesterton was like, "Hold up. We don't know what this fence contains. We don't know why this fence is here. We might cause problems by knocking this fence down. Until we understand what this fence is doing, we cannot knock this fence down." And so we would do well to investigate at the foundational level what the traditions that we have inherited are actually doing. So if we're going to make a new thing, it's totally possible that the fence sucks. And it's totally possible that the fence is accomplishing its task, but creating harm in other ways. And so we can make a better fence than this one. But if the fence is doing something, maybe we want that thing to be done. And so while we are synthesizing the whole new thing that we're going to make, that we're going to understand the world through, then we're going to have to make sure to incorporate that duty into the new thing that we create. We are here at this conference, this camp out, which is called North Star. And I thought it was really interesting when I got invited to speak at an event that was called North Star. I've been spending a lot of time with slave narratives recently, reading Frederick Douglass and reading about Harriet Tubman. And the North Star comes up prominently in these stories and these the North Star is a point by which we can orient ourselves. It's a route. It doesn't move. Everything else in the sky moves. And that's one of the most beautiful things about astrology. But one of my favorite authors, Octavia Butler, said that God is change. And I've really been trying to disprove that, and I can't do it. But and I think that this is well reflected in astrology because everything is moving all the time. We can take a snapshot of your natal chart and get an idea of what the shape was in that moment, but the thing is always moving. It's always moving, like around from east to west, but then all the planets are moving or they're turning around or the moon is changing shape and stuff is always in this state of flux. But the North Star stays right there, stays in the same spot. Everything else moves around it. It's a route. And it helps us to orient where we are. And it helps us to orient toward what matters. And in the case of captivity, maybe it helps us to get free. It's worth remembering that in these slave narratives, none of the ones who get free ever orient themselves around reductive materialism. Every one of them serves a God which is meaningful to them. In this moment of freewheeling misunderstanding, we astrologer mages, are the ones who can look to the sky for a way to contextualize what's going on, to orient ourselves. We are the ones who can become accustomed to the shape of the sky. We can become accustomed to that shape and how those shapes inform the meaningful landmarks of earthly life. So, in that context, if you could know anything you wanted, what would you want to know? Thank you so much. I suppose I'll respond to questions if you have some.
So with this shift into Saturn and Jupiter conjunctions in air signs, how much do you think that'll be affected by Pluto moving into Aquarius within those first couple of years of this starting?
Yeah, well, a lot. Yeah, so what effect does Pluto in Aquarius have on the beginning of the new air era? Yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay. Well, so Pluto in Aquarius is often associated with like future tech, and even the craft of astrology itself is associated with Pluto in Aquarius, which I think is really interesting. It is itself a kind of future tech. Pluto in Aquarius, I haven't spent too much time looking into Pluto in Aquarius. One of the reasons why I had to stop was because I realized that the cotton gin was invented under Pluto in Aquarius. And the cotton gin is this like amazing technology which transforms the back-breaking labor of leaning over and picking the seeds out of the cotton into a mechanized, quick situation that is much easier, much more efficient, and also continued the institution of slavery for another 50 years or something like that. So I saw that and I had to put the book down. I was like, all right, that's enough. This is plenty. But so I think that Pluto in Aquarius gives us this, Pluto is often associated with horror. And Aquarius is techie in some kind of way. So, yeah, AI, indeed. That's exactly where I was going. So, I was actually just having this conversation around the campfire last night, where I actually did some Picatrix magic recently, and I asked a chatbot to help me brainstorm images for this piece right here. And it had some great fucking ideas. and I ended up engraving them. And so there is horror that is associated with this moment. But to my mind, running away from it doesn't get us out. Exactly. It's not possible to run that fast. And so I'm running in. And that's kind of what I mean by like, it's our responsibility to create a new thing. Because we could try to run away and like go back to old traditions, but that's not really going to work. And so there is plenty of danger there about like becoming the monster yourself, right? But there's danger everywhere, might as well accept the danger that is there. I don't know if that was an appropriate response to that question, but okay.
There's also a book on the revolutionary nature of the Pluto cycle, like right there, if you want to check it out before you go.
It's literally a book I own, Stella.
Right on.
Yeah, I would just throw something in because it's so in my wheelhouse. That you said when you were talking about kind of asking about, you know, is this true? This is what led me to where I got with magic. The first people I knew that could actually theoretically teach me something were ceremonial magicians. And within a year, I was like, I don't think this does what everybody says it does. And so that became my quest. Was it does something, but I think they're all kind of encoded by the narrative they were given to see what it did as matching that narrative. I wasn't in the narrative deep enough to do that, so I was seeing it do different shit. I think that it's cool with what I see with you guys and seeing like this kind of new incarnation of this type of astrology where it's come around, right? Because it's come into language that y'all can use. It's a very cool moment because you get to go, okay, these texts are really old. They're not super recent. And so the things that concern these people aren't really the shit that concerns me in a literal sense. So what does it do? What actually happens when that happens? So when you're talking about watching the Geminis and see what's that do? What's it really do? Not what am I told it do. I think it's a brilliant approach. It's just a great thing because you realize like, wait, they're not me. They're not going to see what I would see. And if I'm going to be useful, it has to be what I see, right? So just a lovely thing. I'm glad you shared that.
So I have a question. I don't think it has one answer, but I would be interested in your perspective. So when taking a beginner's mind and thinking about asking better questions, the structures that we use to query and the ways we store and manage the information we are querying, right, are really important. And I'm curious about within the, framework of this beginner's mind, beginners are also often not well able to structure. And so where do you see that balance being and creating structures for asking good beginner's mind kinds of questions?
Yeah. So the way that I would think about that is by getting real sure about first principles. Like the things that I am sure about, the things that I feel like I can understand, I need to be real sure about those things, So gravitation is a really good example of that. I am so sure that this is gonna hit the ground in a second. You know what I mean? I got this. You know what I mean? And so, wouldn't that have been crazy if the shit went up in that moment? Right? But so it's a certain. So I do think that it's really good to be sure about the first principles, right? And so then when something is violating that, then I think that there's two things. One is, okay, how sure am I about my principle here? Is it possible that I missed something? Or is it possible that so if I had burned some incense, then the smoke would have risen instead of falling, right? So there's exceptions, or there's ways that it functions that don't follow the rule, right? So it's going to be good to expand an understanding of how stuff could work. And the way that I think about that is so I could always be wrong. So let's count that as a possibility. But if my first principles aren't wrong, then I don't know, it kind of depends on the thing, if people are giving arguments or are saying things that like violate the first principles, then it's like, okay, I don't think so. If somebody's talking about, no, for real, one time I like, and it went up, and I'm just like, are you sure? So, and I do think that there's a certain moment when it's appropriate to stand on business and be like, I don't think so. I think you're lying, or I think, maybe you was tripping in that moment. I don't know exactly what was going on, but like, but you're right. There is a kind of tightrope walk there, but I think the most important, at least the point that I am trying to make today, is that it is very possible that I don't know what I know. And so I think it's possible that we could spend 2 or 3 generations just working on that. And so like this era of air is going to be 200 years long, right? So the seeds that we plant, we don't see the fruit of, right? Not even close. So, and if we're thinking on the level of like a spiritual tradition like Christianity or a Taoism or something like this, like many thousands of years, not 200, but thousands of years, right? We're now nowhere close to the kind of understanding that is legit. So I think that because I don't expect to get much older than 100, let's say, on a real good day, I think it's my job to ask the question, am I sure? And then let them later figure out what else.
Yeah.
All right, I just want to let you know that when I was responding to these questions, I was sitting in front of a bunch of people who were all looking at me, and I was responding in real time. So I did my best. I took a swing at it. I think now, with the benefit of having slept on this for a few nights, I have a better take on it. So what I said was first principles thinking is the way to structure ideas, and you want to be real sure about your first principles in order that you might build some foundations that are worth building on, right? Which is fair enough, but a little bit later in the next question or something, Josh is going to ask, like, can you ever really know something? And he was right about that. And so rather than first principles, I think a better way to think with this idea is axioms. So an axiom is metaphorical in its nature. And because it's metaphorical, because it's an image-based thing, then that gives you the shape that stuff will follow. And because the way is always the way, the world always follows the same way, no matter what circumstance, or, like the rules are always the same over time in the world, then something like an axiom rather than a first principle can give us some important clues as to how to go about thinking with structuring good and new ideas and such, as well as providing appropriate foundations without getting too married to a certain factual statement. So an axiom like 6 to 1, half dozen the other, right? That gives you a shape that shows you that we don't necessarily have to call things the same thing, but we can all, right? Like, you understand what this axiom is trying to tell you, but it says it in this metaphorical kind of way. And because it's couched in metaphor, then you can use that image to show you lots of different ways that things might go. So it leans closer to the archetypal, and as a result of that, tolerates the variability of the myriad forms that actually exist in the world much better than any declarative statement might, even down to gravity makes stuff fall down. Like, is there a better way to describe that metaphorically so that we can extrapolate across time in many different instantiations?
This just popped in my head. It's I feel like it's similar, but maybe asking it from the opposite direction. But either in a macro sense or from the micro sense, especially in your capacity as a jobbing diviner, astrologer, like what is a bad question?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I get a lot of those.
This wasn't one though.
No, not that one. No, not at all. But like, I sometimes get the question, like, so a question that has an implicit assumption that it starts you off on the wrong foot. So like, I get the question a lot, like, when is he going to text me back? So that it assumes that he is going to text me back, and I'm just talking to you to get the, like, what timetable are we talking about here? Like that kind of thing. Or I've gotten the question, like, what is my husband's sun sign going to be? It's like, this is the most irrelevant possible question. And so this doesn't improve your outcomes at all. So like, if I tell you Pisces and then you meet a lovely Scorpio, are you just going to like kick this motherfucker to the curb because he's got the wrong birthday? Like, you know what I mean? So it's going to be a lot of that kind of, like, so I would say here that a bad question gives you irrelevant information.
I call them preloaded.
Yeah. Preloaded. Yeah. Totally.
Like, ooh, yeah, there's a lot in there already before we get started.
Right. I just need to confirm that his ex cursed him, and that's why he's cheating on me. Got that one time. What's up?
Also, just adding to that, one of my teachers always says a bad question is one that somebody like could have answered themselves.
Yeah. Ooh.
And they didn't look into, like, they had the ability to investigate it and just like didn't trust in their own abilities enough, like affording too much to the teacher.
I feel that. Although I have done a lot of card readings for myself where I got the answer and then I was like, yeah, okay, I knew that. Yeah. And that level of confirmation has felt affirming to me, but I see where you're coming from there for sure.
Well, thank you, dear. I guess I have a question I could answer myself. But I'm really more interested. So I guess I'm interested in just talking to Zamboni about it publicly. What do you think about the idea, or have the space for the first principles that are currently effective change in some way, or alter in some way, over time, or with some time scale, grand conjunction, something like this. Like when we take a text like Pick a Tricks or Pick Your Favorite Grimoire, and we're doing something, and something should be happening. It's kind of impossible to know if it is happening the same way, even if you do it exactly. Our world is very, very different.
Yeah.
We have AI, we don't have kings in the same king way. In the same way that you were suggesting to us, which I love, which is like, I'm gonna have the Geminis show me what Geminis are like. Like, this is very rich, visceral and palpable. Like, that is, true. There's some good truth to that. But I'm generally interested about what you think about the possibilities of first principles bending over some time scale. Because I think I struggle with how knowable is knowledge all the time.
Yeah.
For all people in all places.
Yeah.
I struggle with that immensely.
Sure. Right, which is why it's so important to cultivate a sense of mystery, right? And a flexibility around the mystery that exists, because you never really know. And with something like Picatrix, you never get the same election twice. So you can't even, there's no control group.
Yeah.
You know, there was no way to know if it would have worked better if I'd have did it differently, or, you know, you can't run it again or anything like that. So, yeah, I love this question, and I don't know, do it some more, you know, live with it. I don't know.
That just makes me think of how the North Star won't always not be moving.
Right.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So, like, we could write something down somewhere about the North Star never moving. And I don't know how long into the future someone would have to translate that.
Yeah.
They would be like, what the fuck are they talking about?
Right.
All the stars move all the time. That's impossible.
Sure.
Because they're just not experiencing that.
Yeah, that's so real. I think I looked that up one time. It's like the North Star's not pointing due north in something like 25,000 years or something like that. Some ridiculous period of time, which also...
Unless you're in Hindu, which is makes it last week.
Sure, fair enough. Correction. 26,000 years is the amount of time that it takes for a full cycle of axial progression to take place, which is to say that in 26,000 years, the North Star will be back to being the North Star again. So axial progression is basically, think about a top spinning. So as the top is spinning, then it's wiggling back and forth a little bit, and it's not actually wiggling back and forth as much as it is wiggling all the way around. And so the Earth is doing the same thing. It's spinning like a top is, and is going all the way around. And so it takes 26,000 years for the Earth to make one full cycle of axial progression. So in that time of 26,000 years, there will be other pivot points, other stars to use as a pivot point, such as Thuban, which was around 5,000 years ago, I think. And Vega will be the North Star, will point north, will be the pivot point toward which the North Pole points in something like 12,000 years or something like that. So it's a very long period of time, and to my mind, long enough to really, you should go back to the axioms. The axioms will tell you what the shape is like, and the shape of the way is the thing to focus on more than any particular route. Any particular, like, declarative answer-based route. Think image and metaphor. Yeah, you know, and like there's going to be a time when the sun's done and all this kind of stuff too, right? So
That's billions.
okay,
I could imagine the humans still having writing, and
sure. In 25, yeah, totally.
but not in 50 billion.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you make a good point. You make an excellent point, certainly. Yeah. So, if I were looking at a 25,000-year-old text, and they were translating that, and I was like, hold up, that one is not moving? Because like I'm watching it move. Then what I would probably do is I would try to understand the first principles that were inherent in the writing. Like what is the writing trying to get across that was using the North Star as a marker, as a route, as an orientation point? And then try to navigate according to those principles instead of the North Star itself. Does that make sense?
And that could also be a good one to use in reverse in interpreting ancient texts.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I guess we were kind of talking about that at breakfast, of like, if the Pick of Tricks gives you these ingredients, but you don't have them, and you have to interpret them from your own location.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know what's available in your place and time.
Right. So yeah, in that case, it's like, okay, what are these ingredients speaking to or gesturing toward? You know, like if you you know, like if you need a particular kind of plant, then is that plant, does it have to be this plant? Or what about that plant is resonant with the thing that you're trying to do? And is there something that is locally available which would still move us in that direction? You know, so again, it's not the thing itself, but rather the principle of the thing that you're really trying to get toward.
When you were talking about watching an actual Gemini, I used to be a metal sculptor, and I worked a lot in curves. And you could do all the math ahead of time to figure out when I attach this piece to this piece, the screw holes are going to go here, when I put them together, they're going to match. However, when you get those two pieces together, you damn well better measure the real system and not just assume the holes are going to match up. Because I'm a human being, things change like that, and I save so much time and energy and frustration by measuring the real system really together than just assuming everything is going to work out the way I had the math.
Yeah. Measure twice, cut once.
Then if you drill the wrong hole, you put something festive in it and make it look like it was on purpose.
Yeah, word up. All right, did we do it? Good job, fam. Thank y'all. Oh yeah, what's up?
I don't know if it's good to say in front of everybody, actually.
I think you're a Gemini rising.
Oh yeah. Okay. Cool. You want me to say that to everyone?
Oh, you can. Is there? Can I?
Go for it. Do your thing. Do your
I
thing.
just think based off what you're talking, I think you're a Gemini rising. Trying to figure out his chart in sidereal for like years, and that was, yeah.